All right, good afternoon and welcome to section8consulting.com. And today's video is going to be a Q&A. Now, I know there's a lot of questions around the nation, especially those of you that are very interested in the play out for 2026. There's been a lot of changes, and as this administration continues to go year to year, they're making some of the biggest changes I've seen probably in HUD's history in Section 8. A part of that fundamental change is, as we've all been reading in the news, the administration right now is reorganizing, I believe, 16 federal agencies. One of the first he went after was HUD, and at this point, we're at 10% of the employees that there used to be. In other words, 90% are gone, and 10% are left. He put up, Mr. Trump and the administration decided to also sell HUD's building and give them a smaller building at the, I believe, the Space Foundation. So HUD's releasing a little office at this point for the remaining employees. Now, let's make no mistake. We discussed this back in January and February, the likelihood of things happening, how this administration felt about government waste and overspending. And many of you said, "Oh, well, Jay, you're fear mongering. None of this is going to happen." But yet here we are. So a few thousand of you, I believe, ate your own words on that one, because, look, there's one thing I've come to understand. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican, and this channel is not here to be a platform for either. But one thing I've come to understand is, as long as Mr. Trump remains in control of both the House and Congress, which he has so far, then the changes that he wants will take place. If the White House issues his agenda, okay, this is not guessing, it's not speculation. If his agenda calls for him to do something, have any of you known that man not to do what he says he's going to do? And he's done just that. And as a continuation of that, we'll see it again in 2026, as Mr. Trump has already indicated in his own plan that you can see on his skinny budget on whitehouse.com, that at this point, the federal government will be allocating funds directly to the state. This will no longer be a matter of housing authorities. And so let me verbatim the exact language that Mr. Trump used in his own report for 2026. This is if the House were to remain in Republican control. And here's what's happened. Two things are going to happen. First, we're looking at the proposal for home ownership investment programs, home, community development blocks, CDBG programs. But moreover, many of you are familiar with continuum of care. I've spent the last 10 years teaching you about a separate voucher system under the federal system, and many of you have learned about continuum of care. And so in ESG, these are all programs that support the homeless, veterans, HAPA, persons with HIV and AIDS, and a lot of homelessness, okay? So that will be rolled into a singular program called Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, as it already is. And that big check will be issued to all 50 states for them to do as they wish. I'm going to back up this conversation in a minute with the actual report directly from the White House. And this information, this is in his agenda. So we're not guessing, we're not speculating, we already know. Second, the second check that will be issued. And again, so we're making clarity here while you guys are, and the reason I'm going over this news is because I know in a minute you guys are going to ask a lot of questions. That's the intent of the video, but you usually have to warm you up. Many of you guys will sit in the background and think about what you want to say first, and then you'll hammer me, usually the second half of the video. But so the second proposal is a state rental assistance block grant. You might as well just call it the state voucher system. Mr. Trump is going to roll in. We're going to get rid of public housing, Section 8, tenant-based housing, project-based rental assistance, housing for the elderly, housing for the disabled, housing, all the housing programs gone. He's going to issue a singular grant block, which is a state rental assistance block, and say there's 50 states. That's about $750 million per state if it were all even. And then the states will determine what they do in terms of this, which means issue vouchers. If you're in subsidies, tax credit, all those agreements, this all ends in 2026. It goes down to the state and the language. And again, I'm going to back this up in a minute, so just allow me time to get to that portion. The states will receive the federal funding and become their own administrator. In other words, the housing authorities around the nation are no longer going to be the people that administrate programs. They're not going to open waiting lists. They're not going to accept applications. This funding will be issued to the state. Now, whether or not the state of California, the state of Florida, the state of Texas, the state of New York, now whether or not they choose to partner with housing authorities to help with this process, it's unlikely. It seems to me that if the state's going to take this burden, then it would be likely that most states already have a state-level voucher system. So when they receive $750 million, they will probably run that through their own system, which would likely be through Health and Human Services. And of course, that has many names across many states, but they will be the new administrators of the federal funds they receive. So they will receive two blocks of money, one ESG addressing homelessness, and of course your state block, which gets rid of all these other programs we have and rolls it into one paycheck. They hand it to the state, and the state can pretty much determine how they're going to set out that money. So let's back up this conversation. So that's a mandate issued directly in Donald J. Trump's report. Okay. So I'm going to go down here, and I had to, because we're getting information at a drip level. It's hard to have complete conversations about this topic, but let's go over to what we've already learned from NPR after they spoke with the White House. So according to them, the White House, and again, this is a statement directly from the White House, the White House has described the current system as dysfunctional and says that the states should be allowed to design their own rental assistance program, okay, based on their own unique needs and preferences. This allows instead of dealing with housing authorities and HUD, you are now in 2026 as a transition, okay, if this is approved next year, just like it got approved this time through Congress in 2025, 95% chance it'll clear, okay? There's nothing left to HUD at this point, very little. There's no reason to believe that it won't. The odds are extremely high. They've already got, I think the House already has 3 or 4 seats above the Democrats. And even if there was an even split or even the Democrats held the House, it doesn't guarantee that we're going to go back to the old system, okay? That guarantees nothing. What's hobbled here, and this is the main topic. Let me bring this up real quick before I finish this. There are a couple of things we need to consider throughout this process. One, as we talk about rent caps, term limits, work requirements, we're also talking about withdrawing 60,000 vouchers from people after 2 years on requalification. In other words, 1.1 million people have a high potential at this point to become homeless. The homeless funding is 1/4 of what it used to be. We still don't have a lot of information in terms of veterans. What's interesting is when I read both the state block grant and ESG that's going to be handed to the state, I do not see veterans included in any of this, which leads me to believe that the one thing that will remain in the federal system and be managed possibly by HUD or local housing authorities, probably not the local housing authority, will be HUD BASH. Veterans likely will be receiving, they will have a non-compete agreement with BASH and Veterans Association. So in other words, veterans will receive a separate line of funding with no competition from anybody else and be able to receive vouchers that way, okay? Now, I'm speculating because I don't see that they're included in any of these state block grants. So apparently Mr. Trump, and this is what I'm thinking, okay? Since it's confirmed, I believe that veterans will happen as VAs will receive a separate line of federal funding that's not included in state funding, and they will have non-competition voucher, which means the only competition will be amongst themselves, and they probably will have a high level of funding because the record, Mr. Trump's record at this point, is very clear when it comes to veterans, and also the wall he's building out there is that he is very much for veterans. So we're going to be closely monitoring to see when Mr. Trump is going to discuss what's going to happen with veterans. There's only so many logical paths this can go. So my assumption is there will be a separate line, again, of federal funding for veterans, and they likely will have very little, if any, waiting list and probably a high level of funding, and it will not be controlled by the states. It'll probably be controlled by veterans associations. So things may be getting easier for you veterans or any household that has a veteran in the family composition. Yes, excuse me, I'm doing a lot of talking here. All right, so moving on from there. Under the proposal, states would have more discretion over federal housing funds and how they're used. Now, that's more discretion. It does not mean that because you issue two massive checks to the states and say, good luck, use the money however you like in terms of housing. That doesn't mean there isn't going to be rules. There's still federal guidance. There's still the base rules, policies, and procedures of HUD that have to be followed. And I'm pretty sure if they allocate certain amounts for certain groups like seniors, veterans, and so on, that when they issue that money, there may be a mandate that each category receive a certain level of funding, no matter how the state spends the money, okay? Now, again, I'm speculating, but I also understand Title 24, policies, procedures, and codes, and so there's only so many logical paths this can go in that respect. So I'm going to read on the second page, and, you know, we're making videos trying to keep pace here. I'm no longer of the opinion that we're looking at something that may or may not happen. With the odds being so high and Mr. Trump doing exactly as he suggested he would do, and that would be to dissolve HUD. We had that conversation a year ago, didn't we? A lot of people didn't believe that man would do that. Well, he's very much done it. He's handicapped it. And, one thing I'm already starting to see, if you type in the words in Google, if you use Google as your search engine, type in the word HUD, then click on the news tab. Or type in the word Section 8 and hit the news tab on Google. And one thing you're going to see is housing authorities are using that magic word right now. Funds are frozen. We've stopped issuing vouchers, hundreds of them. Why? Because, well, if you look at cutting half the funding, he's not cutting a lot of funding to the voucher itself. He's cutting funding to the administrative way that housing authorities use the money. So by proxy, if you hobble the housing authority by removing the funding, then what you create is a situation where it collapses, right? So housing authorities are already on a shoestring budget. If you want to collapse the system, the easiest way to do it would be do it from the middle. In other words, kill the funding to the housing authorities, which in turn will become insolvent. And so we don't see insolvency yet, but what we do see is housing authorities are hanging on the last nickels and dimes. And it's only a matter of time. And if you wait it out another year, many of these housing authorities just simply go out of business. There's no assertion that the state is going to want to do business with housing authorities. Okay, many of the states. As a matter of fact, any of you guys that are from the state of California, if you could reach out to my office, if you are aware of a state, if you're aware of a state system in place in the state of California that issues vouchers at the state level, okay? Not at your county level, not at Los Angeles County, at the state level. I've not been able to identify a state level. Now, New York has it. We're looking at Pennsylvania. So the first 5 states we're looking at. We're also looking at Texas and Florida. So Texas, Florida, New York, and Pennsylvania. If any of you are aware of state level vouchers already being issued. So we're looking for existing infrastructure in these states. That way we can get ahead and understand the rules, policies, and procedures. That way when the states receive this, if they already have a minor infrastructure in place to issue those type of vouchers, and you are a resident of that state and you may already be familiar, please do email my office that information. We'd like to look into it further because the goal here is to remain informed and plan for A or B. It doesn't mean there's always that small chance this won't happen, okay? But you also have to understand that Mr. Trump has several additional years in office. Even if he fails to do something, if it fails for some small reason this time, it don't mean it's going to fail in 2027 or 2028, okay? This guy is very determined. And he's already going after, again, 16 additional federal agencies. He's reorganizing the entire government is what he's doing. And he's letting a lot of people go. So look, don't underestimate the value of what I'm telling you. He means exactly to do what he's planning on doing. Now, there is lots of positives to getting a new system in place. Clearly, we'll be dealing with a better system, in my opinion, at the state level than we probably would have through private housing authorities that are a conflict of interest in their very nature by trying to earn money. And they earn money and buy up portfolios, and they open up essentially crack houses, which most of you don't want to live in, which we call project-based housing. So a lot of that stuff's going to vanish with the exiting of a lot of housing authorities. What we may be looking at is them selling off their portfolio of buildings as a last resort to get the last nickel out, and then that'll be the end of it. Unless states, and every single state has their own decision to make in that. I don't see why most states would want to set up business with them. If the state's going to have and be the administrator of this, then why would they want to give what little profit is in this to do it, what little incentive, over to something else that needs to make money that's already probably going to be insolvent? So this, we talked a couple of years ago about, before 2030, we would likely see a different system in place. This old Section 8 finally has reached its last leg. It was a rotten cake to start with. It's a small cake that we kept icing and the core is rotten. And we've been playing it and building on top of it for 50, 80 years. It never worked. Most of you go to HUD's website. Mr. Trump ordered that nearly 90% of that website be eliminated, and it's gone. Much of the linkage I used to use for clients and information is gone. It was overcomplicated, outdated, and to be honest, HUD's website seemed like it was managed more by teenagers and people that lacked any degree of IT experience or social media, because a lot of the information was so misorganized throughout that website. It's crazy. So now what we may see is what we're starting to see is a much simpler version. It's, hey, the government, Congress approves the money. We hand it to the state. Here are the federal guidelines you need to follow. Don't cross the line here. Otherwise, you as a state, all 50 states, you can choose how you administer the funds. And there, of course, may consider putting caps and limits. In other words, certain portions of the foreign funding must be allocated to certain categories. So let's talk about categories real quick. So the administration also argued that the primary reason they're doing this, and this is where the handicapping of the housing authorities and the likely insolvency of the housing authorities is coming, and it's already seeing it. Right now, as we mentioned, housing authorities are saying, we're freezing funds. No, you're out of money and you're buying time, hoping something different happens. Nothing different is going to happen. If the next bill clears by the next November, that's it. You're going to have to close your doors. Housing authorities are going to have to let go of most of their staff at this point because there's no money left. They're running on nothing. And now some were really well managed and they might be able to survive all the way to November next year, but many of them are not. So the word, we're freezing funds. No, you don't have any money. That's just say what you mean. You don't need to report to Google News, to Yahoo, to MSN, to CNN that you're freezing shit. You don't have any money. You're out. You're running on a 90-day budget and you're out of money. And Mr. Trump's not going to give you any more. That's when you go ahead and call the real estate agent, fire everybody in the building, because there's just nothing left for you. He's not going to give housing authorities any more money. That's over with. That is over with. When he made the cuts, and I said, even the last 15 years I've been making these videos, what have I always said about this? That more than half that federal budget, we're issuing $40-50 billion in the housing. More than half that shit got burned up by housing authorities. And here's what Mr. Trump described being burned up. The administration argues these funds have been misused, citing projects like skate parks and concert fucking plazas. So we've got elderly in wheelchairs living in a fucking forest, but we have housing authorities popping champagne and building fucking concert plazas. Last year, we reported on 9 different housing authorities where everybody was acting like convicted felons and they stole every nickel out the building. The feds ended up storming the building and arresting, indicting everybody. In New York alone, they handed out 90 indictments. And so if we're issuing $40-50 billion into housing and half of it's just being roasted and cooked by the housing authority or furthering their portfolio of trash buildings that they move people in and call project-based, then I can tell you the assertion by Mr. Trump's administration is simply this. Those days are gone. Even if the Republicans don't take that House This system is gone. If you hobble it or you cripple it too badly, there's no going back to it. Let me tell you something, even if a Democrat took all of us after Mr. Trump, do you think anybody wants to take on this mess? Your first 90 days as a president, you think you want to take on Section 8? Oh, by the way, we're not going to deal with the popular topics like building bombs, giving money for education. We'd like to go out here and see if we can take taxpayer money and rebuild HUD. It's over with, guys. It's over with. He crippled it enough. Nobody's going to put them in jail. Now, what a Democrat might do after Mr. Trump is they'll get more funding, but none of them are going to get involved in the game of reorganizing HUD again and starting this whole vicious cycle again. No president, unless you're out your mind, no Democrat's going to get involved in the rebuilding of federal agency or HUD. Okay, that's over with. It's just done. So, skate parks, plazas, housing authorities are earning enough money that they're buying. They have large building portfolios. So they're doing pretty well, at least the people that own it, right? They own buildings all over town. Where do they get this money? Now, meanwhile, while they're buying all these crack houses to put people in, what we don't see is seniors living on the sidewalk that can't get a voucher. Or the housing authority is telling you, well, we just bought 21 Plaza Street crack house. We're going to put everybody in that. It only took about $50 million to make that purchase. Unfortunately, we have a 95-year waiting list because of that. We're here to service our bottom line. We're only here to service our wallets. We're privately owned. We deal in conflict of interest. We should not name it housing authority. We should name it conflict of interest, where we'll make you beg for a voucher, wait for a lifetime, and then talk to you like you're a $2 trick on 3rd Street. Now, I want to make one assertion. Not all housing authorities operate unethically. I know I have many housing authority workers that follow my channel and many housing authorities. Not only that, I have many state-level agencies that follow this channel and watch what I say, some which watch to counteract a lot of the consulting work that I do, and others that commend my efforts. But the reality of it here is, I more accolades to all the PHAs that acted professionally, that had a heart, that were in this. But those days are over, and we need to look at how we can prepare for 2026. And 2026 will be a transition, and during that transition, it's really important that we're all paying attention. You don't want to be the last person to find out. And what I find so interesting, he spells it out so clearly in the White House reports, but yet the national news is only interested in using select words and select conversations. The national news will have you only hear that there is Trump, there are cuts, and there's no money, and maybe no Section 8. That's all the news is interested in. None of them have taken the time to actually read what Mr. Trump's going to do. Do you not find that imaginative that I am the only channel out there that actually took the time to read the congressional reports, and we all just make no distinction? We already know. Does anybody question the fact that when Mr. Trump says he's going to do something, he's not going to do it? That he's just playing around? Was he playing around with the tarps? Was he playing around with the wall out there for Mexico? Was he playing around on any issue he's talking about? When he said he might put Elon Musk out of the country, you think he's joking? That man does not joke. Again, I'm not an advocate or a supporter of Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden or anybody else. I don't vote for anybody. I'm not interested in all that. I'm only interested in what I do. My country is my front lawn. I have me and my 7 cats, and I'm good with that. That's my nation. That's my politics. But look, this man's not joking. And one way or another, nobody's going to want to rebuild HUD, okay? So we all need to get past it. For the naysayers, good luck to you. You'll be begging me next year. You'll be begging. You'll be calling my office and going, damn, man, that guy was right. I really did. I really had to eat my words on that one. I'm telling you. I'm telling you right now. We've already had several news agencies contact my company regarding this, and everybody's in a feeding frenzy to figure out how all this will play out. The closest thing we can see at this point is a lot of the states will follow federal policy, but there's a lot to be learned. Right now, I'm doing hundreds of hours of research trying to communicate with different states to figure out how they're going to administrate these big checks they're going to receive, ESG and the rental assistance block. All right, to be fair to everybody, this was a Q&A video. I have carried on enough. I like to get you guys charged up, a little bit bitter, a little bit mad, a little bit happy. And then once I've got everybody in a really shitty mood, then I jump into the comments section, kind of get you all shaking and moving a little bit. Now that I've got everybody's attention, let's move on to comments. Look, guys, I won't be able to address every comment. I made several videos already, and those videos had so many comments in them. I post video that it would take me a week just to answer them. So I'm going to scroll back. Good morning, Sheila Davison. Hello. Good morning, Amanda McNeil. Good morning, and hello to you. Amanda, thank you for the $1 in the support. Guys, if y'all see people sending money through this chat, it's because I believe YouTube has allowed people to leave tips or something. I never advocate for people to send me money. Anybody that sends $1 or $2 through our live chat, that will go into the care and support of the cats that I rescue. That's I don't just house people as a company. We also house cats. I favor cats because we can't do cats and dogs at the same time. So any money sent this way will be to support the caravans. All right, not to line my pockets. I'm not like the housing authority. I don't need to steal in order to look good. All right, so Jen, now I'm going to try to expand this chat a little bit so I can see it better. I live in an apartment and get subsidized rent per disability. How will this transfer? Well, what will happen is all subsidies probably going into 2026 after all of this gets approved, likely they will transition to accept state rental assistance voucher. In other words, all of you that already have project-based subsidies and so on, you likely will go ahead and reach out to the state at that time. And then it's just like your annual reinspection. What you'll do is you'll just requalify. And as long as you meet the state guidelines, then you'll continue to utilize your voucher. Of course, the terms and how much are eventually going to change. So there's going to be a rough transition. This is a big move. But look, if Mr. Trump is reorganized in 16 federal agencies already, and it's already in the national news, he's not scared of making big moves, okay? So we also need to be not scared of accepting that big things are fixing to happen and that we need to take it and educate ourselves. And we're going to have to deal with the blows and the punches here. A lot of you that already have vouchers and housing and subsidies, you're going to necessarily lose this. It just means that you're going to take that information, you're going to go to the state, whatever system they have in place at the time, and then you're going to requalify more than likely. And most of you will still qualify, but there's going to be a different set of rules. Let's also keep in mind that in 2026, under the new plan and state level vouchers, there will be a two-year work requirement and a 2-year cap on most vouchers, unless you are likely a veteran, a senior, and disabled. I haven't confirmed the veteran part yet, but since it's not part of the actual plan that he's issued, then I can only assume that it will be a separate line of federal funding for that. And I'm going to go with that until I know better, okay? So we're going to do presumptions and a little bit of speculation, okay? All right, so I'm going to take a look at some other comments here. I'm trying to get Amanda goes on to say, I'm trying to get an emergency voucher for me and my 16-year-old right now. I'm staying with friends. So emergency vouchers are primarily administered through a program called Continuum of Care. If you're struggling with that, Amanda, I would say reach out to my office. We can give you the information you'll need regarding that. Do understand that funding is very tight, and the funding part of that is coming to an end. And they did not refund that emergency housing voucher. For many of you that don't know, there were 3 different versions of emergency voucher. There's the one that has always existed. There were pandemic level vouchers, and then more current, newer types of emergency vouchers with the intent to address VA, WA, domestic violence against women, HAPA, HIV and AIDS, veterans under HUD bash, and then, of course, you had rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and many others. So there's a lot to learn about it, but you might want to reach out to me if you really want to expedite that process. Chris, when does the 2-year limit start? Hey, look, guys, when it comes to the 2 years, it's as soon as the state has had a chance to have their policies underwritten by the federal agency, then we'll find out. I would imagine that for the most part, it's going to be a lot of confusion. There's going to be a lot of mistakes made, probably even at the state level, because this is a big transition. Things are going to happen. I would imagine the scammers are going to try to walk into this and cheat the system as well. So I expect that the first couple, 2-3 years, we're going to be in a transitional period, which means that we may not see the 2-year limit initially. We may see it roll out as they get more organized and they get rid of all the loopholes and all the problems and all the fraud. Because I can tell you, anytime you make a big transition like this, you're going to have bad actors trying to step in and take advantage, okay? I do it ethically as a consultant, so I ethically try to screw the system. At least I'm not here to defraud it, okay? Visionary says, what about vouchers in Texas? I'm doing my certification for Walker. Well, guys, if you're in subsidies housing, have a voucher of any type right now, look, continue on the path that you're on, okay? We don't need to make any necessary changes to what you're doing or how you're reacting until, late 2026, around November, after the special elections are done and all. Once then, the states pick up their first payments, then this will happen. So I'm telling you, it's going to take a couple of years to roll this out. In the meantime, there'll be a transitional period, and I'm pretty sure everybody will be fairly reasonable, okay? So it's going to be a hot mess, yeah, and I'm going to try to get as much as I can before information I can. I'm also going to be publishing a secondary website to link us all up to all the state agencies, and I'm going to start publishing all the policies, procedures, and of course, getting a lot of the training manuals that the state's going to be using in order to qualify you guys. In other words, all the good stuff. It's going to take time, guys, because I'm in a rat race too. I'm moving. My office is handled for 25 years, handling vouchers at the federal level, and with this going in state, I'm having to adapt to that new way of doing business. And so we're compiling database and we're working on things as rapidly as we can, probably as quick as the states are. I know there's a lot of conversations happening at state level right now about how they're going to handle the new funding and responsibility and who they're going to engage relationships with. Okay. All right, let's take a look at some more comments real quick. Bruce Bindow, I'm in a federally subsidized apartment complex, disabled SSI, go through Rochester Housing Authority. I'm afraid that even though I'm disabled, there are a lot of 2 or 3 men. Well, Bruce, if you have a major concern, then reach out to my office about that. I don't understand quite the context of what you're discussing or asking. So if you want, reach out to us. Ocean Sound 100. You mean, okay. So that's somebody else responding to Bruce. Christine Gannon. Well, HUD, they already, okay, I don't even understand what that means. Guys, make sure your comments and your questions are clear, okay? Because some of the stuff that you guys are asking questions about, it's not clear, okay? It doesn't make sense. All right, so looks like we have an internal conversation between 2 people. Christopher John, currently I'm living at Homer Heights Tower, disability housing under the Muskogee Housing Authority. Okay, well, congratulations. And I know where Muskogee is. I've got family out there in Oklahoma. And we used to shoot pool out there in Muskogee. Good Indian territory out there. Let's see, Jen, if you've applied for a voucher, will I lose my current subsidy? Nobody's going to lose anything right now, okay, guys? What we're doing is preparing to transition to a new system. Unfortunately, the states cannot create the new system overnight, and nor can they create it unless they know that it's physically going to happen. So we're not going to have the firing button till probably late November of next year, okay? We're going to get our first indications at the beginning of next summer. What I'm suggesting here, guys, is we take every bit of information that's being given out at the federal state level, and we start to work to get ahead of all of this. Because once the national news picks this up, and I find it rather amusing, the national news is literally sitting on their hands right now. They're not discussing this. Every article they write, they respin a couple words. They want to hear, they use the word cuts, Trump, and HUD. They can't talk about anything else except for articles that include the words death toll. They love death tolls, they love Trump, and they love cuts. Anything to make them money. They don't want to talk about anything that's actually important. They don't want to talk about the actual reports from the White House or even Congress. They just want to talk about trash. So eventually they'll get smart. They'll smarten up and realize that this is not the end of Section 8. This is a transition of federal funds to the state. Now, God knows whenever they're going to pick that up. I guess they'll wait till it's profitable, then they'll report it, because that's what the news does. It's a piece of shit. This is why I don't read the news. I read science. I read technology, where people are actually talking about something. All the other trash, I don't read it anymore. It's not even worth it. It's more like reading. You might as well go down. You remember you used to go to the grocery store and you pick up that magazine for about $2, and you read about all the fake shit that was happening to all the stars. They called the Sun and all those other ones. Well, that's what the news is today. It's not even fake. It's not even based on reality anymore. It's bottom line and money. Chris, not by housing authority, says Ocean Sound. Your skin is beautifully clear and soft. Well, you're only seeing my face after I've shaved. I'm not sure my skin's that clear and pipty. Tamil DeVille, I like your name. Bruce goes on. You should plan now before the information hits today. Well, look, we're planning ahead. What I find so interesting is NPR first was the first one to pick it up. My channel was second. Now, I know all my little Section 8 copycats and Section 8, all my little entertainers that aren't real consultants. Soon they'll be publishing. There are about 6-7 channels that talk about Section 8. Now, these are people that haven't even got their GED out the bubblegum machine. They're giving out advice. I got one lady, she copies everything that I do. It's crazy. YouTube is filled with con artists. I mean, really. I mean, I actually thought about taking these channels and just sending links to the peds and just having them shut down. But you know what? If that's what they need to do to make their little copper pennies and nickels and go far, you want to play consultant, go ahead. But the danger of playing with people's lives when you don't know what the hell you're talking about is a very serious matter. Bruce, let's see. Amanda McNeil, what's the appointment for? Chris, thanks. Okay, so we covered all the comments. So here's the reality. Late November next year, starting in the summer all the way to November, we'll have a determination if both the House and Congress will clear the bill. Once it clears, then HUD and Congress will issue money to HUD. HUD will allocate it into ESG program. It will be one check that goes to all 50 states. The second will be the state rental assistance block, which will be the second check to go to the states. The states at that point will become the federal administrator for issuing vouchers. What we are presently seeing on the market is if you type in the words HUD or Section 8 in Google and you hit the news tab, you'll see that many of them have frozen vouchers and everything else. They haven't frozen anything. They're out of money, and they're not going to make it another year. So we're going to see mass dissolution of housing authorities because states are not going to look. Let's think about this logically. So the state's going to receive this money, and it's not a lot of money, right? And it's their responsibility to allocate it. Now, why would they want to have agreements with 76 housing authorities across the state? It would be more work for them to sit there and allocate money to all these different little housing authorities. And here's the deal. There wouldn't be any profit in it. There's no way going forward housing authorities can make any money out of this because Mr. Trump has set the funding up to directly issue money for vouchers. It does not support paying the light bill of the housing authority. It does not support paying their employees. It does not allow them to expand their portfolio. It's over with. So you'll see that most of these housing authorities will simply go quietly in the night. Their portfolio will be auctioned off. And once every nickel's been drained, that'll be the end. Okay? Now, you guys can naysay me now. Then we'll have this conversation next November when you type Google Section 8 or HUD again, and you'll see close. And any closed waiting list. The very people that many of you despise and been treated so badly by these housing authorities, most of them, now again, I want to say that not every housing authority or every employee in the nation is bad, just the vast majority. So I would say that's cost for champagne. Even if I was a prostitute on 3rd Street, I only had $2 in my pocket. If I heard the local housing authority close, I would go buy some champagne with my $2 and be thankful, because most of you for the last 50 years, this system has been indentured to people that barely had the intellect of people working at McDonald's. Not that I have anything offensive to say about McDonald's workers, but you get the gravity and point. Be glad this is over. Be glad that's the direction this is going. That doesn't mean the state employees won't abuse people. We're all human, right? But this is our chance to progress to a different system. And while it may be painful during this administration, if another decides to up the funding or even remove the 2-year cap off this, then it means that the state will still be receiving the money, but will be better funded for this to work correctly. In other words, this was the big transition we're waiting for. I thought at the time, 3-4 years ago, before the pandemic is the reason we're not working with direct payments. I thought we were going to move to a cash system, and then the housing authorities would be eliminated through that process. Then the pandemic happened unexpectedly and changed and stalled all this. And then, of course, the haymaker ended up being Mr. Trump. He did the most unexpected thing in the world. He's reorganizing almost every federal agency and firing roughly half the government. That's the monumental thing. That's the big giant thing that probably only happens once in 100 years. That's what it actually took to dissolve HUD. Now, many of you are, oh, no, we're going to go back to the old system or manipulate. How could it? There's nothing left to it. How long do you think? Look, if housing authorities are receiving federal funds and they can barely survive 90 days to a year on the little bit of funding they already make, then how do you think they're going to survive as he's choked off the money to them? Again, the news reports it as the funds are frozen. No, motherfucker, you've got no funds, okay? Just be honest. Just be honest as a housing authority. You've got no money. It's time. And for those of you that don't like profanities, please do forgive me. I probably shouldn't have used that word. I do use profanities occasionally, but the excitement and glee I have to see the end of the era of housing authorities and the unequivocal mistreatment and indenturement of people, I'm glad to see it go. For those housing authorities that operated ethically and above that line, you have all the respect in the world from me. But most of them, unfortunately, did not operate that way. So there's nothing more thrilling for me to see these guys go. Now, are we in better hands? Well, that's to be determined, So there's other things we need to also consider. With all these big changes coming in 2026, you put 2-year caps of work requirements, it's going to push back and empty out 60 to 70,000 vouchers. And that will make approximately 1.1 million people homeless if they take no further action. It will be the largest migration of homeless in U.S. history. And we don't effectively have federal funds to address that. So we have bigger ripples that are going to come from this. Now, will the waves be a tidal wave, or will this be a slow slow progression to a very large tidal wave? The pandemic, I thought it'd be a tidal wave, but it turns out it took years in a slow build to mass eviction. I believe that this will be the same scenario. It'll be a slow rise to 1.1 million homeless. Now, again, you're given options on a 2-year limit. You get your shit together, you go get a job, or you don't get a voucher. If you're a senior, you're a veteran, or you're disabled, or you're any combination of those three, and you're part of anybody's household, then you don't have anything to worry about at this point. Now, I'm not determined whether or not you have to be a senior, disabled, or veteran as a head of household, or you simply have to exist in the household with the voucher. So let's remain to see how the state's going to determine which is going to be which. It's also undetermined as for those that receive a 2-year voucher with work requirements and 2-year cap as to whether or not landlords are going to want that. Now, we do have one example already in play, and that was through Continuum of Care offering rapid rehousing up to 2 years. And it turns out roughly 25% of landlords accepted the couple of months up to 2-year program for rapid rehousing. So that's a good indicator that roughly 25 to 30% of landlords may accept 2-year vouchers. So it's not an all dire situation. But let's also be very, very clear. When the news attacks this, they're going to spin it a different angle, okay? They're going to spin doom and gloom. And if any of them start writing articles related to landlords, they could actually sway public opinion amongst landlords and then cause a bigger problem, okay? Because the news is a big influencer, okay? Sometimes not all landlords make their decisions based on reality. Sometimes they just read the nightly news and that's what they believe. They don't fact check anything. So that's what we face: information, misinformation, and whether or not these things will work. The reality of it is, everybody's going to do their part. And again, any president going forward after Mr. Trump can make changes. But I do not ever see us returning to what there used to be because there's nothing to return to. It is a parking lot with no building. If you create insolvency with all the housing authorities in America over a year or two, which is going to happen, and they no longer exist, nobody's going to pop up a tent and want to play housing authority. I'm telling you, the system is collapsing. It's disappearing. They're out of money, out of funds. Soon they won't be able to pay their employees. And next will be the light. And then next they'll be selling off their portfolio. So if you can't see what's right in front of your face, then I don't know what to tell you. You're clearly you're not connected to reality. Okay. So we're going to be working on our new website connected to section8consulting.com. And that's to allow all of you at no cost to be able to link up with the state voucher system. Now, my presumption is that it will be picked up through the state's infrastructure that's already in place. They may not choose to do it that way. We're going to presumptively take action and just assume that is going to be the case. So for states that already have a state voucher system and infrastructure in place, we're going to link all that up for all 50 states. And next, we're going to wait to see how states handle this. And then, of course, after a couple of years, when a new president takes office, we'll take a look at all the big changes. With any big changes like this, there's going to be a lot of error, a lot of problems, and probably a lot of fraud, and a lot of loopholes. Thank God for loopholes. That's what helps you guys get housing, right? So if you've got questions or you've got concerns or other issues, or you've got problems with your housing authority, your landlord, you don't understand policies, procedures, how to navigate the system, reach out to our office. We're by appointment, of course. I have assisted roughly 22,000 people over 25 years, probably way more than that. I think our company has around 500 reviews. I think all but 9 of those reviews were positive. I think I've got one negative against me on, I forget the old BBB. Somebody actually complained that I gave him a refund. I mean, what kind of retarded shit is that? You go to the Better Bureau of Business, type in my name, and then they're actually pissed off that they got a refund. I mean, so that would be the limit of how ineffective that I potentially or my company can be. So section8consulting.com and our office will be transitioning to a state system. I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to sit on my hands. I'm going to continue to collect the information, report it to you guys, and as we can confirm each part, we're going to be ahead. The goal here is to be ahead of the national news and everybody else. I'm going to try to partner with different states to make sure that anybody who's dealing with our channel, that whenever these changes come, you have information before anybody else does. That's the goal here, okay? Our goal right now is to kind of speculate and keep our minds open to all the potentials. Your voices and your comments in this channel, I probably have 60, 70 states, 60 or 70 housing authorities that follow our channel. I have at least 91 .govs and .states that follow our channel. In other words, state employees. So your comments are part of public opinion. And states are going to be looking for information. They're contractors, and when they're developing the infrastructure to handle all this money, they're going to be looking at all options. And we want to be out there with a lot of videos to help them understand what the general public wants. It'll be part of the solution, so that when this fully rolls over, they have a good idea of people's fears and what will work and what may not work, and be able to do some advocacy there. Moving on from there, let me get back to comments one more time, and I'm going to wrap it up because my vocal cords are hurting. We have a lot more videos to go. We're getting about 2 or 3 paragraphs of information from the White House and also Congress, as well as a company that we're dealing with that handles policies and procedures at the state level. So we're getting kind of drip fed things, but it is among the first information out there. So I'm getting it definitely before even national news is at this point. I don't expect that to maintain status quo, because once this becomes something beneficial to national news, then of course they will pay to be able to get that information, even before my office does. But for now, I'm definitely able to get considerable amounts of small information, and we expect this circumstance to keep evolving. That is the plan. Now, one thing I've noticed is Mr. Trump, when he writes a plan, he doesn't do alternatives. He doesn't have a plan B or C. He requests that both Congress and the House either comply or something serious is going to happen. So I can tell you there's no middle ground with this fella. If he says he wants HUD gone, he'll do precisely that. If he wants to send two big paychecks to every state and then have them handle the voucher system, he means what he says. And there's very few people at this point that have the ability. None of them really can stand in front of him and stop him. So, and again, I'm not advocating for Trump. I'm not here for politics. I'm nor a fan of Trump or Biden or anybody else. Okay. I advocate my own country, my own little lawn, and my 70 cats. That's my politics. Okay. Sometimes it's going to sound like I'm more of a Democrat. Other times you're going to say I'm a more Republican. And sometimes you're just not going to like me. Well, that's tough shit. That's how it goes. Sometimes reality and the truth hurts. But I think the main part here is we need to continue to educate ourselves and keep up. That way, this would be a much easier transition and stress-free going forward for those of you that need a voucher in housing or have a voucher in housing, okay? All right, so last comments here. I'm going to have to pull them up here where I can see them. And then it says you can cuss if it's your MF channel. You're right about that, but I try not to use words that I know will intentionally aggravate the YouTube algorithm. I'm pretty sure one day they're going to ban profanities. And then I'm just going to be a middle-aged white dude with nothing to say if I cannot use a few profanities. I can't. How else are we going to make this spicy? All right. So Nadia Noel Contras. I like that name. Thank you sincerely for everything you do in assisting us with, and thank you for thanking me. Very few. I mean, there's a lot of people pay our all of us to help them navigate systems, get vouchers, housing, rescue them out the forest, all kinds of stuff to help assist in the pursuit of suing housing authorities, suing landlords, and even criminal cases. I've flown out many times around the country to be a witness in many cases to explain the average day in life of a person living in project-based housing. And for those that don't know, before I was ever a consultant over 30 years ago, I spent 10 years on the street. I was a homeless person between 16 and 24. I don't need to walk a mile in anybody's shoes. I invented those shoes. I already know about them. I owned a pair. Okay? I've seen drug addicts, prostitutes, all kinds of crazy shit out there. Here we are 30 years later, and now I advocate. I'm one of the largest advocates for the homeless, seniors, and elderly, and those almost about to be homeless there is. And the difference between me and every other consultant in the nation is I understand your plight personally. I also understand the ability to exploit a system that I've actually walked through. I don't just drive back in my Beamer to my nice white middle-class house in some neighborhood, and my only objective is to earn money off the back of people that ain't got any. I've advocated 15 years on YouTube, thousands of time, my personal time, and I've rescued countless 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds, and 90-year-olds from sleeping in their car when not a single housing authority gave a shit if they froze to death or burned alive in it. So nobody's going to question my integrity on this channel, ever. I've got a proven track record, and the track record is getting people off the street at any cost but breaking the law. I will exploit the hell out of any federal law or state law that they ain't fixed. If you haven't fixed it, that's not my problem. I do whatever objectively it takes in order to get people in housing and do so legally, okay? I advocate very heavily for that. And I am a big fan of HUD. I never had an issue with them. My primary issue was with the ill treatment, the unprofessional misconduct of many housing authorities, and the theft, fraud, and prejudicial behavior that I saw play out when you gave all that money to housing authorities for 50 years and you have people talking to people like trash, indenturing them, okay? When I mean indenturement is that if you raise any questions or any problem with the way the housing authority operated or spoke to people or dealt with people, then they would find any reason which to get rid of. That's indenturement, my friend. You don't ever get in the business of helping people and then you take advantage of them. I can't think of a lower scumbag in my life. And that's a high representation of a whole lot of housing authorities. Maybe one day I'll think about all the good ones and I'll publish a top 50 housing authorities for actually giving a damn about people. But the rest, I have nothing nice to say about it. I won't miss them when they go. And I hope the state takes a better position and the care and welfare of people, considering that agencies and housing those are run by people, then how could you be so damn evil? All right, I'm going to close it up before I end up saying more things that I may regret or say something that may offend. Not that I really give a damn, but I will see you guys again tomorrow. Probably, odds are, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. But if I'm too busy, then you may catch me around 4:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. I really enjoy talking with you guys. It doesn't hurt me to share a whole lot of personal aspects of my life and the things that I do. In the end, we've been lied to. Many of you have been lied to for a long time. You've been forced into trusting people that never earned your trust. The goal here is to tell you the truth, even if I offend you. At least with the truth, you can be mad, but feel that at least you can get somewhere with the information, okay? Again, my name is Jay. I am the owner of Section8Consulting.com. I am an actual real consultant in Section 8. I am not an entertainer like all the others on YouTube. I'm not here for copper pennies or wooden nickels or to write fancy tags. So all you little guys out there sending my office emails about I can fix your tags and make you more popular. I'm not here for popularity. I'm here to share information that changes people's life so they get housing. I'm not here to earn money from YouTube. I don't give a damn about YouTube. Okay? Thank you. Y'all have a great day.